Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to our guests here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. We'd greatly appreciate it. We have Mariah Baird on the podcast with us. She's the owner of Lifting Limits Incorporated. She's a women's slash couples personal trainer and transformation specialist. She's also an online trainer. She's coming to us all the way from Utah, but most importantly, she's our current guest. Mariah, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on what inspired you to make that lifestyle change and motivated you to adapt that healthy and fit lifestyle?
Okay, so it's a little bit of a longer story, but so 3 years ago, I was about 50 pounds more than I am now. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I was told I have issues with my thyroid, and really ultimately, I was just super unhappy with myself, with my life. Like I had such low confidence. I just really didn't feel very good about myself. And so for me, what ended up happening was despite all the stuff that people were telling me was why I couldn't lose weight, was actually kind of what inspired me to lose weight. Because it's kind of like the inner rebel in me was like, you tell me I can't do it, like watch me do it. So so that's what inspired me initially. And I started figuring out what really worked for me with lots of trial and error. And what ended up happening was I didn't just like lose 50 pounds. I My entire life changed in such a drastic way. And it was so much more than just losing weight and feeling confident. It was about doing things that I thought were impossible for myself. And it was such a huge life changing experience for me. And it ripple affected into every other area of my life. And that was so powerful. And so I thought I wanted to be a dentist. And I actually ended up leaving that to pursue what I really love, which is helping women and couples with not just their physical transformations, but just their lives in general. So because it is a pretty emotional process for a lot of women. So that's kind of my background in a nutshell. And that's kind of what inspired me to start my company and just really like I just love this lifestyle.
That's amazing, and that's such a great story. And when you were getting started with your transformation, what would you say was the biggest struggle for you, and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest struggle for me that people don't always talk about is the self talk that you have. Being like, oh my gosh, it's been 2 weeks and I don't look amazing yet. That sucks, like being patient with the process. I'm not a very patient person. And so that was hard for me. I always had to be like, I had to fall in love with the process to really get results. But yeah, I'd say that was definitely the biggest struggle was the patience part of it.
I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, especially people in the younger generation where, I mean, they want everything now and they want it yesterday, where it's just, give it to me now. Or the patience part is an aspect that really just needs to be taught a lot more because it takes months upon months. I always tell people to just even start to see changes. I mean, and some people just expect, if they go to the gym and they work out one time, they're just going to look in the mirror the next day and you're going to be like, oh, God, wow, I look amazing. It's like, no, it takes so much
Yeah.
patience. But once you see those results, I mean, it's so addicting, but it's a good addiction in the right way, and it's just one of the best benefits that you can do. But how did you start? Were you doing mainly just a lot of cardio, or at what point did you really start going into the weight aspect?
I actually started out with a trainer and it took me like 3 months to summon the courage just to do that. So it was like in a CrossFit setting though. So I started out like in a more CrossFit, and then there was trainers that would help me a lot through the process. And there was a girl actually who helped me a lot through the whole process. But that was when I really was like, I'm going to do this. I can do this. And when, it's like you said, you start seeing those little wins, it's very motivating. And so that's when I really took it seriously and stopped letting like the excuses get in the way of like, oh, this is hard. Or I guess I was just kind of desperate at that point to like not just make my body better, but like my life better.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, and I mean, we've already talked about it, but the mental aspect of it, what were some tricks that you sort of use to convince yourself that, like, hey, this is a time process. This is something that's not going to happen overnight?
I'm really big into self
Mhm,
development and self talk.
mhm,
So, and I think it takes time. Like this whole thing, it's been about a total of 3 years
mhm.
since I started it. Obviously, that's been a battle in itself. But along that, I found that I have to really, really work on being nice to myself and understanding of myself, and those times that you fall down, like you just get back up and you keep going and you keep trying. Um and that's what really has kind of gotten me where I am today. And even when you do mess up, because you know what, you're never going to look perfect all the time. And I think that's like a horrible thing in this industry that I don't love, is that we portray this image of when we're super lean, but I don't think that's all the time. And that doesn't need to define you. So when I stopped defining myself by my body, I actually lost more weight, which is kind of funny. But it's, you can't get so wrapped up in thinking that's going to get you everything that you want, because it's just one component of your life.
I mean, again, I could not agree more because we've had so many guests come on that they talked about, like, I thought if I lost weight and I got really, really, in shape and ripped and jacked, that, I would feel so good about myself and, everything would be
Yeah.
fine. It's kind of like those people who say, like, if only I had this amount of money, everything would be perfect for me. When you don't realize that 99% of these people, when they finally got into their shape, they didn't work on their mental health. So they said, you know what? I still felt the same. I mean, I sure I had a six pack and sure I was really, really in shape, but, I still felt bad because it's all, I mean, the mental aspect is so much more than the physical aspect. And, to train both those at the same time can be just a huge, huge task for a lot of people. But I mean, I highly recommend that, like you said, self-talk is very important. Just winning those daily battles against yourself is so huge. But
Yep.
I mean, I always love to bust the stereotype of it's gotten better. I mean, the last 5 years because of Instagram, a lot of times, but there's so many women that still believe if they go to the gym and they touch one weight, they're just going to hulk out and gain, like 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And, I always say to that, if that ever happens, sign me up. I'd pay my entire, life savings to go and hire that
Yeah.
person. But I mean, did you ever have that fear specifically when you were getting started? And even if you didn't, I mean, being a women's personal trainer and couples, but mainly with the women, you probably hear that a lot. What is your main response when you hear that?
That's a great question. And I still have that fear a little bit because I bulk up so fast. Like that's just my body type, is to have a lot of muscle. So I understand where they're coming from. I would say that, it depends on how you're training, but if you're training the right way for your body type, all you're going to do is just like give yourself a little bit more of a shape. You're not going to bulk out. You're not going to like be super bulky unless you're lifting heavy repetitively. So there's different methods of training. And honestly, if anybody has any questions about that, of course, like you can reach out to me or any other trainer. But like it doesn't happen unless you kind of consciously are trying to achieve that look.
I mean, absolutely. I always love to tell the story of, when I was in college and getting bigger and stronger, one of my really good friends came up to me and she said, like, Ryan, I really want to go to the gym and, get a little bit more in shape, but I'm just afraid of getting bulky. I don't want to get bulky. And then finally one night I just told her, look, the amount of weight that you carry in your purse weighs more than a lot of the dumbbells in the gym, and you're not gaining any amount of muscle from lugging that thing around. So that finally convinced her. And I mean, it's like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to get healthy if you go and do that. That's another thing that I say. But I mean,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, and that's honestly the truth. But obviously, the number one thing that I preach about, which isn't preached about as much on social media, but I think it should be, is your confidence is going to go sky high. I mean, you feel so much more confident. I mean, I was able to
Yeah.
talk to people that I normally might have never talked to. How did that impact you as well? I mean, going for your weight loss and becoming what you are today, how has that also impacted your confidence?
Oh gosh, so much, because like I didn't want to go talk to guys. I didn't want to, and honestly, even people from high school. I was like, I don't want people from high school to see me because I feel like they're gonna look at me and they're just gonna be like, oh man, she really lost herself. Is what they're gonna. That's what I was telling myself. Um, what really happened though was, as I started to lose weight, it was so much more than just being like, oh, I can wear these clothes again. Like this is so exciting, like, or I can go on the beach and wear a swimsuit and not want to hide it myself anymore. It was like I did something really hard, and that in itself gave me more confidence to do other hard things.
100%. But also, I love to ask, because everyone is so built different genetically that, I mean, this question is one of my favorites to ask, but everyone always has that one body part that really, really takes off, that they don't have to train as much because it's just genetically really built. And then everyone always seems to have that body part that really just lags behind it, that, have to train to overdrive just to catch up to everything. What are those body parts for you?
So my arms, they bulk up so fast.
Lucky.
So I kind of like, with my training, I don't train them as much.
Mhm.
And then of course my butt, I have to train that a lot to have a butt. So those are kind of the things that I have to really work on.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's my back where I can just train it, once every 6 months and it would still look good. But I mean, I'm 6'3", so my legs just,
Yeah.
I know I was a pitcher too, so I had to have that lengthy, skinny pitcher body. So yeah, every time I got to train it twice a week, and it's my least favorite day, but I get through it. But how long is your journey before you decide, like, hey, I could really become a personal trainer and a transformation specialist? I mean, I know you were going into the practice to become a dentist, but how long into working out before you realize, like, hey, I really want to take on this personal training route?
Oh, that's a long story, but I won't. I'll do the short version.
Oh,
Um, I just was obsessed with going to the gym.
mhm.
And I remember telling myself, I was like, if I could just get paid to go to the gym, like that would be a dream come true. I hate wearing anything other than workout clothes. And I feel like I'm in my element when I'm at the gym. And I, I guess what really happened was the more that I got like into personal development, I met some people who encouraged me to own my own business. That was when I was like, I can really make a change, and I want to make this change for people in the way that isn't just like with dentistry, it's just kind of more one aspect. But with what I do, I can help people with in unlimited ways. And that's what really motivated me to do this was I wanted to help women and couples, not just lose weight, but like change their entire lives in the way that I had, if not more. So it's extremely rewarding. And I just wanted to help people change their lives. That's still all I want to do.
I mean, I can't imagine what that feeling is like helping out all these people. But what's the reasoning behind the name Lifting Limits Incorporated? Is there a story behind that, or was it just something that you thought would sounded catchy?
Um, when I first got that, I was like writing down all these different names. I was like, what should I name this? And for me, I always felt like in my life I had some sort of limit, like limiting me. And so I was like, you're in the gym and you're lifting, and like there's limits that you're trying to lift. So it's not like just physically, it's also emotionally. And so I was like, I really like that name because it's lifting your limits
Mhm.
physically and emotionally and every other aspect of your life.
One of the
So
things that I mean, I think everyone hears, especially the people that are really into the health and fitness on Instagram, is when they see someone, come up with their own brand or come up with their own anything, sometimes they just roll their eyes because, like, oh my God, now another person trying to sell their own stuff. Do you find it sometimes hard then to convince people that, I mean, you're like actually legit and you actually care about them just because there is that stereotype that like so many people are trying to make their own name for themselves?
I think every single business owner is going to experience that in the
Hmm.
beginning. That's the same for everyone.
Hmm.
And the biggest part of it is like believing in your own ability to do stuff for people. So and then when you first start doing anything, people are going to doubt you. You're going to doubt yourself, and you have to just keep doing it. And the more that you do it, the more of the belief in yourself is going to grow. And then people really they just kind of see how you feel about yourself. Like when I was doubting myself, everybody else doubted me. And the more that I was like, I can do this. I'm really changing lives, then it happened. People see that. So I would say like my biggest advice with starting up any sort of anything at all is do what you love, and it will work for you eventually. Just never give up on it.
I mean, I can't agree more, especially being that was the same story with my podcast where I mean everyone was like, oh, another podcast, everyone's doing them now. But then once you just plug away at it and you go and then people start to see and then eventually you start getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and I mean I love doing it and so yeah, I mean like you said, just follow your passion and just keep plugging away and you are gonna doubt yourself. I mean, I still doubt myself now to this day sometimes where I'm like, am I even doing anything right? But yeah, it's just telling yourself it's like yeah, you are helping out spread a lot of people's messages. So yeah, I 100% I totally understand that. But when it comes to being a personal trainer, I always love to ask, what is the number one excuse that you usually get from people who say like, "Oh, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I don't want to, make that change." What is the number one excuse that you usually get?
I'm gonna have to think about that. I get a lot of excuses. Um, so it's just true.
Yeah.
I think the biggest excuse is time.
Yep.
So, and I never thought that would be it. But people are like, I'm just so busy. I have so much to do. And I'm like, when you'll prioritize anything that's important to you.
Mhm.
When I first started this journey, I was a full time college student. I was working full time. I didn't have any time, but you make time for the things that you want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you all the times that we've had nurses on here who work, like 14 to 16-hour shifts and they're still able to get that workout in. I mean, it's
Yeah.
all about prioritizing your time. And I always tell people, if you were to go and follow these people around for the 24 hours out of the day, not like stalking, but just like observing them, I know. So you're not like sneaking in through their window and looking at, but like if you were to see like all the times that maybe they took like a 5-minute break to like watch TV or a 5-minute break to just do something stupid, that would add up to at least a few hours where they could have ended up, getting that workout in. So yeah, I mean, it's just all about that management skill. But did you start out as a couples personal trainer as well, or was it one thing where you just started out as women's and then you realized that you could sort of work into couples training as well?
I started out training anybody.
Hmm.
When you start out, you're like, oh, I'm starting a business. I'm going to take who's going to work with me.
Hmm.
And so I really took on kind of everybody in the beginning. But as I progressed, I found that I have always been an emotional person. And so obviously, I work very well with women. And so I realized those were the people that I could kind of help the most. And I just kind of went where I felt like I was the most needed.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if many guys would really like the emotional trainer too much come at him, but yeah,
No.
yeah. But working with, I mean, that's so great because because guys have their own specific problems when it comes to working on it, girls have their own specific problems, but the couples thing is actually really cool yourself. How's that experience been though, working with couples? Because I can imagine, it might be a little hard, to have a couple working with you as opposed to the individual person.
It is challenging, but that's actually why it's really fun for me because you get to see the dynamic between the two. And I'm very fortunate. I feel very lucky that I get to be very open and honest with them, and they're very receptive to what I say. So you get to see like how people either depend on each other or they don't, or just like the little aspects that are not interfering just physically, but in their relationship in itself. And so I would never call myself a marriage counselor or anything like that, but
It's
it's
pretty darn close, yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
like, yeah, I kind of do feel like, as a trainer, you kind of become people's therapist a little bit, which is actually kind of cool.
Oh,
But
yeah,
yeah,
100%. You don't even have to go to school for it too. So I mean, good. It's a
yeah,
win.
it's
It's a
true.
win. It's a win on both sides. Believe me. Yeah, absolutely. So when you got started with this business and where you are at now, what would you say is the number one obstacle that you've had to overcome, and how did you do it?
I know I keep referring back to like personal development stuff,
Yep.
but it's because it's just so real.
Yep.
The biggest things I've had to overcome is myself.
Hmm.
And I know that might sound weird, but it's true. Like just my self talk, my self doubt, and just continuously overcoming even other people's doubt of me. So that's
Hmm.
probably the hardest part, but you just keep going and it gets better.
100%. But what is that feeling like for you being a personal trainer? Because a lot of people, they just see the results that people post about themselves personally. They don't really ask the trainer what that feels like. What does that feel like for you when you really help someone achieve their goals and just see them getting healthier? Does that really just make everything worthwhile? All of the pain and all the suffering that goes into it and all of the long days. Does that really make it worthwhile when you end up seeing what the client is eventually able to achieve?
That's the whole reason I do what I
Mhm.
do. That's the whole reason I got into this. And it's the coolest, most beautiful experience to see other women loving who they are more and living better lives and just seeing like everything in their lives get better. So it's amazing for me and it's the most rewarding thing in the world and it makes anything difficult or hard that I ever have to do with my business so worth it for me. It's
Yeah.
just beautiful.
Yeah,
That's the easiest way to explain it.
yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what that feeling is like. But have you ever gotten sick of being in the gym? Because I always wondered, if you're working out in the gym and then you got to still work in the gym afterwards, do you ever have times where you want to leave, or are you just so into it where you're just like, I love every minute of it?
It's I just love the
Hmm.
gym, honestly. So when I'm there for myself, it's just my time. And so I mean, I work out at a different gym that I train my clients out. So I separate the two because that helps me divide like my space from their space. But in general, I'd say there are some hard days for me. But I've noticed if I'm taking care of myself, it's, always a lot easier. if that answers your question.
Oh, I mean, believe me, like I could go into work knowing that it's like a 12-hour shift, but if I got the right amount of sleep and if I got, everything right, if I ate the right
Yeah.
amount of food, it's easy peasy as opposed to, if I got like 2 hours of sleep and I'm just groggy and I know it's going to be, absolute hell.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say
100%.
the days like when I'm not taking care of myself, oh my gosh, everything is hard.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter how much I love it. And I'm like, I love what I do. Like, why is this not like something I want to like do all day long? And it's because I feel like crap. So
Yeah.
it actually like owning a business, I think actually forces you to like be the best version of yourself, to take better care of other people. And I think that applies to moms as well, and parents and anybody who is responsible for other people is you learn how important self-care is.
Mhm.
So
Well, you brought us into it, and I was going to ask. So, what is your best advice for moms out there? Because I always like to say, being a mom, that's a full-time job in and of itself. Still finding time to go to the gym can be very hard for a lot of moms. I mean, we've had plenty of moms on the show, but what is your best piece of advice for moms who are just looking to get in shape, but they don't think that they have enough time just because with the kids? What are some tips that you can give them in order to help them get started?
I would say the easiest way for me to explain this to moms is that if you can find time to go get your nails done, or if you can find time to go to the grocery store, you can find a way to go to the gym. And so most gyms provide daycare, so that's not an excuse. And I would just say, it comes down to, if you have time to watch several hours of TV every night, you have time to take care of yourself, whether that's even just at your house and you watch YouTube and, your kids are off doing something else. Like if there's a will, there's a way. That saying is just so true with this.
I mean, again, I'm agreeing with her on everything, but that thing is also, something that's so true because, like we talked about earlier with the time management, I mean, you really, there is no excuse, especially if you have any amount of free time. Now, granted, some people do just naturally have busy schedules. I'm not going to say that there aren't those type of people that exist, but the vast majority of people definitely have the time if they just had the willpower to do it. But now, getting back to
Yep.
sort of your journey. How has it been mentally for you to just realize, because a lot of people who are especially overweight that come on the show, or not overweight but have weighed more, you sometimes like identify that as just you just imagine that that's what you're going to look like forever, where you're just always known as the overweight person. But then when you lose weight, for some people it can be really hard to change that mindset to like, I am not that person anymore. I don't have to act like that anymore. Was that ever a struggle for you when you started losing weight, just realizing that like, hey, I am looking different than what I normally expected I would look? Was that really hard to just trick your mind into being positive?
Yeah, that's a awesome question. Seriously, because I would say that's probably the biggest battle for me. One of the biggest battles for me is I identified myself with being a girl who had, you know, autoimmune diseases that were fighting her own body from being like, fit and healthy. And for me, it was just like I felt like I told myself, I have to work so much harder than everybody else to like be slender, and it's just you do like slowly have to kind of like realize that you're a new person, and it takes time, and it's such a mind game, it really is. But I kind of honestly, I recommend this for a lot of girls, and I had to start doing this, was if it's not encouraging you seeing the slight wins, like don't look at the scale, because I have seen so many people sabotage once they get close to a number, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is really cool. Watch me go back to how I am." Like, because a lot of it is the identity that you have had for so many years, and so you have to really work on that and just kind of focusing more on the process of it, rather than like the end result, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's a good question. And I just would say it takes time, but just never giving up on that.
I couldn't agree more. And you touch base on it. You said you were talking about, like how sometimes people, they lose all this weight, but then they gain it right back. And I always,
Yeah.
ask the bodybuilding competitors I have, because they go through a similar thing where, I mean, they get so lean down for a show that it's not sustainable, that they're going to gain a ton of weight afterwards. Have you ever
Yeah.
dealt with that yourself, where I mean, you just lost a lot of weight and then you gained a little bit of weight back because you just, people do, they slack off sometimes, or, they just step off a little bit. Have you ever dealt with that? And even if you haven't, I mean, I bet you've had clients that have dealt with that. How do you sort of convince them that, it's okay that you maybe put on a little bit of weight? You just need to stick to your morals and stick to your goal.
That kind of goes into a little bit of what I was talking about earlier, and this
Mhm.
is something that I'm experiencing right now. Like, when I go into a photo shoot, I have one scheduled in a couple weeks from now. But when I do that, I'm really good because I have something to work towards. But as soon as that's over, I'm like, I'm going to go back to eating everything because that's awesome. And also for a lot of us emotional eaters, that's hard too. I would say the biggest part of like fitness is you're going to fluctuate no matter what. That's a part of life. And that is why you cannot have your self worth defined by your body. And if anybody else is ever defining you that way, it's more of a reflection on them than it is of you. So it does come down to honestly, like, loving yourself more.
I mean, all the times that we've heard people that just need to realize that don't, and then it's too late, but then they finally, learn the hard way. I mean, you just got to realize that too. I mean, your weight does not define who you are. But now, two of my favorite questions that I love to ask, every health and fitness guest that we have on. So the first one for me, when I started, going to college and getting bigger and stronger, it was really great. But one of the negative things is that you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're going to get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next couple of months before I move out. And every time they come home with groceries, I have to lift basically the entire car and all their groceries into the house. Have you found that
Yep.
to be a similar experience where people just see you and they know that you've had this transformation where they just assume that you could do favors like that for them?
Oh yeah.
Mhm,
Yeah. And most of the time I just own it and I'm like, okay, I'll just do it. I don't
mhm,
really care. But oh yeah, when I started getting more fitness, people are like, you're like this fitness girl, like you could do some crazy stuff. And I'm always like, I mean, you're right, but like I don't want to right now. Like
mhm. Oh,
so
yeah, I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times last summer that I got texts, saying like, "Hey, Ryan, I'm moving out of my parents' house. You want to come help me move?" And it got to the point where I just started saying yes, but as long as I got my workout in before that, because I'm not going to get too tired lifting that stuff to not be able to work out. So, I mean, yeah, it's just one of the struggles that people have to go through. And I always say, like being 6'3" myself, I could have no muscle at all, and people would still ask me. So it's a double-edged sword. But now
for
my
sure.
yeah. Now my favorite question to ask, and again, this is a multi-million dollar idea for anyone out there listening, but when it comes to clothes for fit women, your clothing options can be limited. I always like to say, like, if you have big shoulders, dresses aren't really your best friend. Jeans are another thing that we hear of all the time, where just because, you're supposed to have big legs and a smaller midsection, and jeans are not made that way. I know that you said that you love to wear workout clothes, but other than that, what are some ways that you sort of compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
Oh, I wear a lot of stretchy
Hmm.
clothes. I actually don't wear jeans at all,
Hmm.
really.
Yeah.
They're just not very comfortable. So I'll wear stuff like, I feel like I'm either wearing workout clothes or like more business attire kind of
Mhm.
stuff. And so the nice thing about like business stuff is that it is kind of like more spandexy
Mhm.
materials oftentimes. But yeah, that's totally a struggle and it is hard. But I don't think it matters what your weight is. Like finding clothes that fit are hard for everyone. So
Yes, absolutely. But again, if anyone out there has clothes, especially for fit people, I mean, guys have their own problems too, but for women
yeah.
also, definitely let them know. But now, how did your friends and family react to when you started to make this change? What was their main reaction, and has that evolved at all over time?
Yeah, when I first started losing weight, some of my family members kind of like because they doubted their own ability to lose weight, they kind
Mhm,
of would project that onto me. And so I had to, just kind of keep at it. But as they saw me get results, like all the people that were kind of doubting me were like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, it was cool what happened because then they started to believe that they could do the same thing, which is what I wanted anyway.
mhm.
I just wanted to like have them realize that they could do it too. And so the more that I've stuck with it, I actually won't train my family because
That's a good idea.
yeah, you just don't. It's
Yeah.
just not always the best idea. But if they ask for advice and stuff like that, I will always give it. But you kind of have to honor where people are at.
Mhm,
And I've noticed if you try to like pressure your family or anything like that, it doesn't work.
mhm.
So you just have to lead by example. And it does affect, their own belief in themselves usually.
Yeah, I mean, we've had so many people come on, especially like the moms when they're trying to teach their kids to adapt to healthy and fit lifestyle. You can't force them because they won't want to go. But maybe if you leave like a little trail of breadcrumbs or whatever, and just say like, "Hey, I'm going to the gym." Eventually they'll be interested and be like, "What's a gym? What's that?" So it's all about just subtly. You can subtly kind of lead them in the right direction, but just making
Yes.
sure that you give them the decision. Not to, because if you force someone to do it, 99% of the time they're not going to do it. But now, one of the things that is never talked about on Instagram that I love to talk about, because I had a specialist for this come on and he talked about this, but sleep. Sleep is so important when it comes to
Mhm.
recovery, when it comes to repairing all the damage that you do after workouts. I mean, I had the number one sleep specialist in the planet calling me all the way from Oxford in the UK. And first of all, he had one of those British accents where you felt just smarter just by talking to him, where I was like, I'm gaining so much brain power because he just had one of those great British
Yeah.
accents. But yeah, but we talked about that because I said, I have a lot of health and fitness people that come on, and they sleep is a thing that a lot of people can struggle with. But what is your daily amount of sleep that you try to get? And for clients, what do you try to preach to them on how to get the right amount of sleep?
I would say the minimum I recommend is at least 7 hours.
Mhm.
For me personally, I love sleep so
Mhm.
much. For me, every person, you kind of need to gauge what's best for you. But if you're training, like, you absolutely need sleep, like you were saying,
Mhm.
because your muscles need it to recover. Your whole body needs it just to function well and to have you be a more productive individual. But for me, honestly, I feel like 8 to 9 hours is like great for me.
Oh, especially when I was training too, like really hard in college. Yeah, I had to get that at least. I mean, I overslept a few classes back in the day just because of that. But I still graduated, so there's no worries to that. But now we go to our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire where we're going to ask our guest here about a dozen or so health and fitness questions that we ask all of our health and fitness guests, and we're going to see how our answers stack up to everyone else. So for our first question, what is your go-to workout song at the moment?
Oh, I don't know. It rotates. Rap music. The end. Not a song. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more of an old school. I gotta have like my cheesy '80s music on, where or like the Rocky
Really?
Four soundtrack, which is like super cheesy. But I have a problem. So like, I have a gym at home, luckily, and it's it's pretty nice. So I work out there, 75% of the time. But when I do go to a normal gym, I'm one of those guys where I have to wait for the beat to drop. So let's say I'm doing like a lat pull down or something. I'm sitting there for like 30 seconds. I've had people come up to me and say like, "Hey, are you all right? Did you like pull your back out or something?" I'm like, "Nope, just waiting for the
That's
beat to
actually really
drop."
funny.
Yep. So yeah, I am known in the gym now that I frequent as the guy that waits for the beat to drop. But it's better than being known for something worse. So I mean, I totally play to it all the
I do
time.
that with cardio.
Hmm.
Like with cardio, I'll be listening to. I'm like, oh, let's go super fast. I'm gonna run super fast.
Yep.
I get it. It's
Yeah.
effective.
I used to do that for cardio too, but now I don't try to do cardio as much because for my job, I just do enough cardio as it is, where I don't need to step on a treadmill ever again. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could work out with a celebrity, who would it be?
Oh, I love Heidi Powell.
Hey, pal. Yep.
She is my fave, and then also Nicole Meja. I know you only said one, but they are both like
Doesn't matter.
amazing
Yep.
people to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that they would be great. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train any celebrity, who would it be?
Ooh. Oprah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's actually only our second Oprah answer, but yeah, she has been. I mean, that would be a great one too. And I mean, just talking to her alone would be well enough as it is. And I'm just writing down the answers because once we get to a
Yeah.
certain number of podcasts, I'm gonna unleash like a board that like shows here's what our popular answers were. So yeah, Oprah is on the board again. But now, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Oh, this is gonna sound bad. Probably chips and salsa because that's my favorite thing in the world. I know it's not healthy, but you
You
gotta live
you
flexibly.
put chips in the fridge?
No, that's
No,
no. Chips and
we'll
salsa part
accept
of
it though. We'll
it.
accept it though. We'll accept it though. So chips and salsa, yeah, we'll take that.
Yeah,
But
that's my fave.
I
My
was gonna say,
favorite thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's great to have a variety of answers because we normally get, like the chicken and the egg whites from all of the bodybuilders. But yeah, one of the things that really surprised me is mustard is a really popular answer among them too because they use the mustard.
Really?
They use the mustard because it has 0 calories and 0 fat, so they'll put it on like their chicken just to give it a little bit of flavor. But I
Yeah.
always, I always tell them, if you have to do that, you might want to start to reevaluate your life if you're having to put mustard on chicken
I
in order for
know.
it to taste good. But yeah, that's so yeah. Again, we got chips and salsa. That's the first time on the board. We'll see if someone else answers that.
Yay!
Yeah. So now,
But
what is one thing that you would change about the health and fitness industry if you had the all knowing power to do so?
I would change this about each and every single industry, and it is the people who are being, for lack of a better word, fake
Yep.
with everything, just about their results. Just there's so much that you can tweak on social media that I see women in particular comparing themselves to, when they're comparing themselves to something that's completely false and fake. And it's creating so many issues with younger women, older women, it doesn't matter. Um, that's the thing that drives me the most crazy, is
Yeah.
just people lying about what they really do, where they're really at, who they are. Drives me nuts.
We get that. I mean, we had Lacey Dunn on the podcast a few months ago. I don't know if you know who she is, but she said the same exact thing where it was, people who, or some people that think that if they just compete in one show and don't even get like their certified personal training associate, that they just all of a sudden are just this fitness guru that can like really
Yeah.
help you out. That's one thing that I have too. But yeah, just the disinformation and so many people that try to pose as something that they're not, or
Yes.
like showing images that are clearly like months upon months old is another thing. But I get that from a business standpoint, if you're, because like you're not going to look great all the time, but just and a huge one is especially with the celebrities, where you see these celebrities going like, oh my god, getting ready for a movie role, and they're curling like 2-pound dumbbells. And then next thing you know, like a month later, they're super shredded down, and it's like, let's be honest, that's not what you did. So you're kind of lying to people and
Right.
making it look like that's what you do in order to get into that shape. So yeah, I mean that's a
Yeah.
that's a
And to
big thing.
kind of expound on that, but like, I understand
Hmm.
why people do that. I
Yeah.
really do. And honestly, I've done it before too.
Oh yeah.
And I think that the more you get into the industry, the more that you're kind of like, you know what? I see how much this is damaging other people. Like, I don't want to be a part of that anymore. And so it's like, we all have our different journeys
Hmm.
along this. And so trying to be perfect because you're uncomfortable with being seen as imperfect is so common, but it's actually what gets people to connect to you more and it helps more people.
Absolutely. The biggest posts that I love the most are the ones where people like get real action. They're like, hey, maybe this is what I look like right now, or hey, this is me without makeup, or hey, this is actually, what my daily life is like, as opposed to the one that you might see where everything is like, I'm running on beaches all the time. I'm like on planes and I'm traveling and I'm going to all these exotic places where it's like, what, just seeing that action, just realizing that, I mean, and it brings me back to the reason why I started loving to have my health and fitness guests on too, especially the women, because in our society, I mean, if you see a muscular woman walking down the street, I mean, it gets everyone's attention, but a lot of times people aren't able to look past the muscle and realize that there's a human being deep down there, especially for women. For guys,
Yep.
it's a lot easier because a lot of guys, associate, being strong, where they're just like, oh, dude, you look awesome, and then that's it. But with women, a lot of people just can't get their minds off of that. So I love having guests come on and, share their story, because it makes people realize, they're just human beings just like me and you and everyone else. They might just work out a little bit more and have more muscles, but I mean, they're just normal average people. So again, like you said, just realizing that we're all just normal people who go through ups and downs just like everything else with that
Yep.
health and fitness industry. That is so important. But
Yep.
now, what is one thing that people who follow you on Instagram would be surprised to know about you if they met you in person?
Oh. Um, I think, to be honest, I'm a lot weirder in real life. Like, I'm just kind of weird. Like, I'm really goofy. Um, but I think on Instagram, I kind of talk about more serious
Mhm.
stuff a little bit because it's what I deal with in my day-to-day life with my clients. But in real life, I'm kind of a little bit more goofy, and so I would say maybe that might shock them.
Well, that's the
You
type of
know,
people that I like the most. I like the goofy and the little
yeah,
aloof people, because I mean, it's like so many people take, especially with the health and fitness, they take it so seriously. But I love those people that are just kind of a little bit more chilled and relaxed and just like, hey, yeah, I'll just go with the flow, kind of a little goofy like. So yeah, I mean, I love that aspect about what you kind of like to present. So yeah, but I know you got to be serious at times when you're like, you can't be goofy all the time. But yeah, it's a
yeah,
great way to do, especially in an industry where so many people try to take things so seriously. But now,
yes.
what is the last TV show that you binge watched?
I'm still currently binge watching New Girl. It's my favorite. It's so funny.
Okay, so I was in like my senior year in high school. My older brother started watching it, and I started making fun of him for it because I didn't know how good it was. And then he recommended it to me,
It's
and then I
so
finally
funny.
watched it. Yeah, it's one of my favorite shows of all time. Yeah, by far. I mean, Schmidt is one of my favorite characters, out of any
Oh,
TV
he's so
series.
great.
And I have so many friends. I have so many friends that are girls of mine that are like kindergarten teachers or they're school teachers, and they act just like Jess. So every time I see him, I'm like, oh my god, I'm getting like a Jess flashback. We usually have like a game night once a month where we go and hang out. So yeah, I always tell that to him. But yeah, I love New Girl. Is one of the
He's
good
so
ones. Yeah.
funny, Jeff.
Now, what is your favorite TV show of all time?
My favorite
Mhm.
TV show of all time. I loved the Moulin Rouge. Like, it just was so good. I don't think I'll ever stop loving it.
Never seen it, but I have heard about it, so I might want to check that out. Now, what is a guilty pleasure movie that you enjoy?
I don't know. I would say I just kind of those are the main ones I told you.
Yeah.
Lame answer, but
Yeah, yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I'll give my answer. So all the guys out there, close your ears. You never heard this from me, but The Princess Bride is my guilty pleasure movie. That movie comes on, you know, I know most of the,
I
I
don't think I've
know
ever seen that.
you wait, what? Wait. We're stopping the podcast. Okay, yeah. So here's what you're gonna do. As soon as you're done, and as soon as you have about
Okay.
2 hours of free time, you are going on and finding a way to watch it, and you are going to watch it. It is a great movie. You will thank me, trust me. But yeah, Princess Bride,
Okay.
100% recommended. And all of my guy friends, you never heard that from me. I mean, I'm never gonna admit that in person, but yeah, that is my guilty pleasure movie. But now, what is your favorite fashion trend of all time and least favorite fashion trend of all time?
Ooh, my favorite fashion trend is high-waisted
Mhm,
pants because they are great and they are
mhm,
flattering, I feel like, on everyone. And I loved the flare pants. Those were great.
mhm,
My least favorite has got to be like the jegging thing.
mhm,
Like they got rid of flare pants. I thought those were great.
mhm,
Like, and now they only just stick with like the super tight pants.
mhm. Yeah.
Hate it.
Yeah, those are, I mean, and obviously, you know, being into the health and fitness, you're gonna love those, you know, jeggings and leggings and all those type of things. But me being personally from Minnesota, I mean, I love flannel, especially in this time of the year, just because it is so warm and comfy. But my least favorite fashion trend has got to be, I mean, my dad ruined it in the late '90s when I was a kid, but fanny packs. I mean, he was rocking one of those, and
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, fanny packs are good for women, but for guys, I mean, if I can do one thing with this podcast, it's to help stop the spread of fanny packs because I know they're making a little bit of a comeback. But now, for our last question of the questionnaire, if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Mhm,
I would say get out of your own way.
mhm,
Like believe in yourself.
yeah.
Um, you really can do big things, and you don't need to be raised from it. You know, money to get what you want in this world.
That is so true. And I mean, that would be one of the things that I would say, along with, you know, I was a huge people pleaser back then and just realized you're not going to be able to please everyone. I mean, not everyone's going to get your vibe. So that's a huge bit of advice. But now,
Yeah.
what would you like to see? Like, if we were to talk again a year from now, what would you like to see lifting limits be at right then and there?
Like what's like my end goal with
Yeah,
my
we're like,
company?
if a year from now, like, what would be your dream of what lifting limits would become over then? Like, would you like open up another place, or what would you do? What is your goal of the overall goal of the company?
You know, my goal is to branch out into an app
Mhm,
and just figure out a way to not just help people more one on one with like a gym, but also online.
mhm,
And just figure out a way to like reach more people and create a big community of support for people.
mhm.
That's the easiest way to explain it. I have all these different ways I want to go about it, but ultimately, like my big goal is to make people feel less alone in this world, and to make them feel like there is a good support system behind them.
And that is, I mean, honestly, all the best of luck to you. I mean, honestly, that is such a great message. And I mean, getting an app, yeah, I'd be one of the first people to download it because, you know, that's just so amazing. But now also that you're also, you know, just owning this business and, you know, it's all on you. What are some ways that you sort of like to separate your work life balance? Because I know even with this podcast and my other job, sometimes I find it hard during days to, you know, sort of have that me time. Has that ever been a struggle? Because I remember I'm a business major in college when I graduated. So I remember one of the professors was saying, you know, like when you are your own boss, you are working 24/7. Not even if you're not just working, but mentally, you're always thinking of ways of what you can do better. Are there any
Yeah.
like strategies that you use to sort of be able to maintain that work life balance without just going crazy because you're thinking about work all the time?
Yes. I kind of force myself to meditate.
Mhm,
I need that because I get so caught up in like what I need to do this, I need to do this. I have so much I need to get done all the time. And you're right, it is all on me at this
mhm,
point. And so it's I've just learned that I really have to do things that make me feel good
mhm.
to kind of just be able to carry the momentum to keep pushing forward and creating more and doing more.
Yep, and that's really what it all is about. You just need that little mental time. I mean, I mean, I'll take a weekend off every once in a while and just not do podcasts just so I can just relax and recuperate. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, everyone needs that little break. And now, where can people find Lifting Limits Incorporated? Do you have a website? Do you have all these links to it that I could provide down below?
So my website's almost done being made
Okay.
right now. But at this point, I would say just Instagram or
Mhm,
Facebook would be the best way to reach out to
mhm,
me. So it's Mariah Baird on
mhm,
Facebook, and then of course Mariah_Baird on Instagram.
mhm. And again, you guys, I will leave all those links down below. And again, we cannot thank Mariah enough for being on the podcast. It was so great talking to you, and we wish you nothing but the best in starting your business. And do you have any plans at all of ever doing like a competition, or is this just one of these health and fitness things where you just want to be just a trainer?
I don't think I'll ever do a
Mhm.
competition. And the reason why is because I don't like the idea of people getting compared to
Yeah.
each other. It kind of goes against what I'm into,
Mhm.
which is self acceptance and just embracing the different body types there are. But if I ever do it, I don't want to like shoot myself in the foot and say I'll never do it.
Yeah.
But if I did, it would just be something I would want to do for myself.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And again, thank you so much for honestly coming on the show and sharing your story. It was a great story. But again, thank you guys so much for listening, everyone that listens. I'll leave a link to all of her stuff down below. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.